In the supply of products and commodities in public health settings, we've got all these fancy buzzwords, and the common buzzword of the moment is market dynamics. And that for me is one of the most important influences that the Access to Medicine Foundation has in our space, is that they create a new shifting in market dynamics. Very often in the market forces that are playing in public health settings, we've either got somebody who needs to step in or someone who needs to step up, and there needs to be a catalytic intervention to create that dynamic, to actually create that force. And that for me is one of the most important things that the Access to Medicines Foundation does. Working with manufacturers to step in, working with policymakers to step up in order to create the change that needs to be done. So in the availability and affordability of product, there's lots of forces that need to play. But if you start at the patient and you say what we need at the end is for a mother to be able to walk to a community outlet and be confident of availability on the shelf of the commodities she needs to care for her family, and work our way back from there. That's the forces you're trying to exert. You're trying to create the dynamics in the market that ensure that on-shelf availability of affordable quality medicines. So that's the outcome that we measure success by. Everything else is just a driver to get there. I think the most important piece for me is the driving of policy and thinking with governments. There's a lot of conversations at the moment around local manufacture. Everybody wants to talk about local manufacturing of medicines. But there needs to be a logic to it. There needs to be an approach that says, okay, which commodities are we going to make at subnational level? Which are we going to make at national level because there's an economy of scale at a country? But which do we need to actually have a regional strategy? And if we're dealing with a regional strategy, what regulatory changes have to take place in order for the primary country regulator to be able to enable the exports, but also for the other regulators to be able to accept those products? And so there's a whole bunch of policy dynamics that need to take place and policy changes that need to take place in order for local manufacture not only to be fast in its implementation, but effective and sustainable in its commercial viability. So the shift into a concentration on generic medicines is vitally important, because we do need a disruption of the current supply model of generic medicines, and that will change by changing the way that people buy. If you change the way that people buy, it will change the way that drug companies supply. It's the simplest, most logical thing in the world. And so by working with donors, by working with governments to change the way in which they procure, to get more local procurement, to be buying from local distributors, buying from local manufacturers, that makes a great change. But the other, probably even more vital part is, why do we have to wait until products come off patent before they become available in our markets? Voluntary licensing and the movement of tech transfer to local manufacturers or generic manufacturers is a vital part of allowing new drugs, innovative drugs that are making fundamental differences in disease outcomes to be available earlier in our markets. The concept of affordability and availability. It shouldn't be an issue where you live or what your level of income is as to what your access to healthcare is. And so that drive to availability and affordability of quality medicines is, for me, the driver of equity. Is that if the products are available at an affordable price in the community where people live, that is equity.